Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, sister. How are you?
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm well, alhamdulillah. How are you?
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khair for joining us today, sister, on the Niqabi Diaries. Could you just introduce yourself for us and tell us a little bit about what you do?
So, my name's Celeste. I don't really go by my name online just for personal reasons, but I'm in my first year of college, so I'm about to finish my first year in May. And I started wearing niqab last September, and I've been Muslim for about 2 years now.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah, sister. So could you let us know how you became Muslim?
So my mom's paternal family are actually Yemeni, so they're
Okay.
Muslim. And I kind of grew up, my father's Mexican, so I grew up Roman Catholic, but then as I kind of got older, my family sort of separated from the church, and we kind of more secular than anything. But I also spent some time with my mom's uncle who'd come and visit us often, and he would just kind of tell me about Islam. So I kind of grew up with both of those things. And then when I was around 15, I went to go stay with them for like 2 weeks, and I just got to see like the family structure of Islam and how close they all are. And it's multi-generational families in like one home, and I like that just because like it's good to have that kind of support from family when you're all close with each other.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, so I think that was the main thing that really attracted me to Islam, was like the family structure, because I didn't really have that growing up. My parents divorced when I was young. They got back together and then they separated again recently. But even when they had got back together, it was not like a very good foundation.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. So, what have you been given any support from your parents in coming to Islam? How's that transition been for you?
So, at first, I was actually scared to tell my family, not because I thought that they would like disown me or anything like that, but just because my family, they can be mean. Like, they don't mean to be mean, but that's just how their personalities are, and like we all kind of make fun of each other and things like that. But this is something that is like personal to me and something that like I don't feel comfortable with them joking about. So when I first told them, I told them through text message, because I didn't want to do any face-to-face contact where I had to like actually deal with what they were going to say.
Yeah.
So I sent a group text message to my cousins and my sisters, and then I texted my parents separately, and everybody was kind of like, oh well, no you're not, because I was just like, by the way, I'm Muslim now, and they're like, oh well, no you're not, and I'm like, I swear. And then my mom had got home from work that day, and she didn't really talk about it because she really thought I was joking. And
Yeah.
I told her, I was like, I'm not joking, right? And she was like, and she wasn't like surprised, I guess, because I'm actually a history major, so I was involved in like I was interested in like religious societies and stuff like that. So she wasn't that surprised, but she didn't think that it was something I was going to stick with.
Yeah. That's usually the case, I think. I feel like a lot of the time as reverts, we have this experience. It's like people, like your parents often think that it's a kind of phase that you're going through. So eventually you'll just kind of grow out of it. Yeah. SubhanAllah. So apart from obviously like you're surprised from some family members all thinking it was a joke, like when they've realized that actually, you're doing this, like what has their reaction been? How are they with you now?
So they're okay with it. I mean, obviously there's going to be some resistance to it, because it's just I'm so different now than what I was before. And my family isn't like a conservative you take your hat off at the table type of family. Like, we are very dysfunctional. They like my mom, she was a teen mom. She got pregnant when she was actually 15. And almost all of her sisters were teen moms as well. And so it's just kind of like the way I grew up was my parents and like my family throwing parties and stuff like that, and being around that kind of environment all the time. So now that I'm Muslim, I don't really spend a lot of time with them, just because I don't feel comfortable putting myself in those kind of environments, even if it's with my family. So they kind of aren't really like registering that like I'm not going to be able to feel comfortable going to every kind of event that they have that's supposed to be a family function, because our family functions really aren't family friendly for people who aren't in our family.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, mashallah.
But
So yeah, carry on.
my cousin's husband is actually Muslim. She married a Muslim man.
All
And
right.
so I kind of thought that, like, you know, with bringing another Muslim into the family, and then also, like, you know, his family is going to be around us too, like, it would help kind of just get them to understand. And they're very accommodating of him and his family. But when it comes to me, they're not really the same way. Like, if I'm hanging out with my female cousins, like, their husbands will, like, come in and, like, they won't tell me that their husbands are home and I'm not wearing a hijab. And
Yeah.
but if it's my cousin's husband's, like, sister and stuff, they, like, make sure to tell everybody that they have to leave, and that, you know, like, they take those precautions for them. And I
Right.
think it's really because they don't really see me as, like, a real Muslim.
Yeah. Basically, it's like you've just kind of like you've changed, but you haven't changed for them, kind of thing. So they're not seeing it the
Yeah.
same way. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Subhanallah. Yeah, you have that, because I remember going to one of my friend's house one time, and mashallah, like, she's good with things like that, but she thought that I don't know, like, I was a bit confused actually, because she thought that I have to wear hijab only in front of Muslim men, not in front of non-Muslim men,
Oh,
which I thought
okay.
was a bit weird. I didn't like. She's not Muslim, so I don't
Yeah.
expect her to like know everything. But I was a bit confused, like, because I've never, like, you know, sometimes when you become Muslim, you get yourself in situations where you find out people have some quite odd, like, understandings or beliefs about Islam. So she thought that it
Yeah.
was okay for me to show myself in front of men who are not Muslim, but in front of Muslim men I have to show, like, have to like cover. So I suppose it could be connected to people having the belief that, you know, as a Muslim woman, you're just wearing the hijab because, like, you have to respect Muslim men or something like that. But
Yeah.
that's not the reason why we wear it. Yeah. So, mashallah, how did you come to be wearing the niqab then?
So when I first became Muslim, after I went to the masjid and I took my shahada, I immediately started wearing the hijab. And it was, when I first started wearing hijab, it wasn't because I wanted to. Like, it wasn't something that I did for a lot. Like, my older sister, well, all my sisters are older than me, but one of my older sisters, she was kind of giving me a really hard time about everything. Like, she was like, oh, well, you're Muslim now, why are you doing this? You're a hypocrite, why are you doing that? And it's like, you know, with being like the way that I grew up, like, I'm not going to change from being the way I was into like a pious Muslim overnight, you know?
Of course, yeah.
And so I felt like if I wanted her to see that I was taking my religion seriously, it was something that I had to do. And so I started wearing hijab, but eventually, like, I actually, like, did fall in love with hijab, and I did actually start wearing it because it's my duty as a Muslim. It's my obligation for Allah. And after that, I would kind of wear niqab on and off. I would never wear it, like, around my family, but my friends are really open, and they're really accepting of me, and, you know, may Allah guide them. I love them. But so me and my friends, we would like kind of take trips together and stuff, and like we'd go and stay in hotels and go to the beach. And so when I would go with them, like, I would wear a niqab, and like I just kind of feel it out and see how I liked it. And I did, but I was still in high school at the time. So, and so I was like a senior in high school when I had become Muslim. It was the summer before my senior year. So I had started wearing hijab, and it was already like a really big transition for like other people to see, like, because how people knew me in high school, like, I wasn't like a conservative religious girl, you know. I
Yeah.
mean, like, I wasn't super crazy or anything, but I was like the high school kid that hung out with the older kids that was like an adult, because I didn't really have like a parental guidance and stuff, so I kind of just did what I wanted.
Okay.
Yeah. So when I started wearing hijab, everybody was like, what? They're like, oh my gosh, Celeste, is that you? And I'm like, yeah. So my friends, actually, one of them had asked, like, are you gonna wear that to school, like, on Monday after we could come back from one of our trips? And I was like, no. Like, I was just like really taken aback. Like, he saw it as something like super casual, like, if it wasn't a big deal. And I was like, no, I can't just like randomly show up to school like that. And then he was like, well, why not? And then I was like, you already saw people's reaction to like me wearing hijab and things like that. So I wanted to like do it in a way that wouldn't draw too much attention to myself.
Okay.
And then I like now I realize that it doesn't matter like what you do when you're going through like a change like this. It's people are going to notice. There's going to be attention on you no matter what.
Yes, exactly.
So it's just kind of one of those sacrifices we have to make for Allah, is like we sacrifice our comfort to do things that we need to do. But so I decided, you know what, I'm just going to wait till I go and leave for college, and I'll start wearing it then, and then I won't have to deal with what my family says, and they won't have to know because I'll be away from them. And it's what I did. So I started wearing hijab, and I didn't tell my family because my sister, before I had left for college, I don't remember how she found out, but she told my mom that I wanted to wear niqab, and my mom sat me down and she said, I don't feel comfortable with it. I worry for you because you're already Muslim, and I worry that other people are going to do things to you. And I think that is a genuine fear for her, but I also think it's just because she doesn't like that I'm Muslim. And she's made comments before about her not liking that I'm Muslim. So I was like, okay, it's fine. She doesn't have to know. And so I actually told her this weekend when I went back to visit them that I wear niqab now. And it did not go, I mean, I didn't expect it to go good, but I expected it to go better than what it was.
Okay.
So
Wow.
I basically just sat her down and I was like, Mom, I need to tell you something, but before I tell you, I'm just letting you know, like, I'm not asking for your opinion and I'm not asking for your permission. I'm letting you know as a courtesy.
Yeah.
And because I don't want to like keep hiding things from you. And so she looked really worried. Like, she thought it was going to be something like way worse. Like, I could see it on her face. And I was like, don't look like that. I promise it's like not a big deal. You're going to think it's a big deal, but it's not a big deal. And so I told her, and she was like, why? Like, why would you do that? And then she said, our family doesn't even do that. And that's when, like, I had to, like, stop for a second, because every time I try to do things, like, that a Muslim should, she always says, well, our family doesn't do that. Because even though our family are Muslim, they're not entirely, like, conservative, you know?
Okay, yeah.
And she has, her standard of what a Muslim should be like is how they are. And so when she said that, and I was like, you know, a lot of them, some of them don't even pray regularly. So, like, and then she stopped talking for a second because she knows, like, you know, prayer is a really big thing in Islam.
Course, yeah.
So I was like, a lot of them don't pray regularly either. So I'm not going to be taking advice about my religion to, and I don't mean any disrespect to them, but I just don't feel that they really take it as seriously. Like, it was more of something that they inherited and not something that they chose.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So so we talked about it. She was like, I just feel like it isolates you. And I was like, well, how does it isolate me? You know, I'm a college student, I have a job, and, you know, so I told her, I was like, how do you think it isolates me? And then she was like, well, I don't know. I was like, see? And then she's like, I just think it's extreme. And I was like, it's extreme to you? She's like, well, you know, my uncles and your uncles are going to tell you the same thing. And I was like, yeah. And, you know, like, I was just kind of going back and forth with her about how she needs to stop making our family the standard of what a Muslim should be like, because there's so many Muslims, and the kind of Muslims that she's not around any other Muslims that aren't in our family. So I was like, you don't have that kind of, you're only seeing it from a one-sided perspective. And then my sister, the same one who gave me trouble about like wearing hijab before, came in, and she was like, what are you guys arguing about? And we weren't really arguing, we were just talking really loud. But and my mom told her, and she was like, you guys are talking about that again? And I was like, well, no, I told her that I've been wearing a niqab. She was like, well, you have? And I was like, yeah. And then she said, she got angry. Like, she got really angry, and I was like, you need to relax, dude. So she like kind of flipped out on me, and she was like, well, it doesn't make sense for you to be wanting to do that, but you still do all of these other things, talking about like some of my minor sins that like I'm still working on. And I was like, dude, that like, Islam is not an all or nothing religion. Like, I'm not just gonna like put on a hijab and like I'm never going to do a bunch of things again, you know?
Yeah.
And it just kind of like was undermining all the other sacrifices that I've made, and that she's seeing too. Like like, she's noticed too that I changed. Like, she made a comment about something that I had been doing. She's like, is that because you're Muslim? And I'm like, yeah. She's like, I knew it, because I know that you before you were Muslim would never do something like that.
Yeah.
So it's like she notices, but then it like doesn't matter to her if I'm making other mistakes, you know?
Yeah.
And it was also kind of really annoying, because to my mom, it doesn't, like, anything that I do is going to be extreme and not what Muslims do to her. And then to my sister, if I'm not being like completely 100% a perfect Muslim and strict, it's you're being a hypocrite and you're not a real Muslim.
Yeah.
So I was
Can't
like,
win either way.
yeah, I was like, well, alhamdulillah, like, they're not gonna judge me on Judgment Day, so it's okay.
Yeah,
But
alhamdulillah.
so yeah, so we finished the conversation, and I told them both, and I was like, you both are entitled to your uninformed opinions, and I wasn't asking you for your permission or anything. I was just letting you guys know. And my sister also, when I first started wearing hijab, see, okay, this is what was like really crazy to me, is that she was telling me before that I was like a hypocrite for not wearing a hijab. And then when I wear a hijab, she sent me all of these articles from like women who aren't Muslim scholars. They are women who studied at secular Western universities,
Yeah.
saying that hijab is not an obligation on Muslim women.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, this is just not even true.
Yes, exactly.
And I tried to explain it to her, and I'm like, these articles don't take into consideration like the words of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, and like, and they don't even, like, their interpretation of the Quran is like completely wrong.
Yeah.
And so we got into a big argument about that a few years ago when I first started wearing hijab. And so it was like, it's just like, no matter what I do, I'm never going to be able to win with them.
Yep. Basically. SubhanAllah, like literally what you're saying, I can really relate to, because you know, this is one of the big trials that reverts face. I mean, obviously reverts can go through a lot of things, but I think, like, especially when you're a very headstrong type of person, like you obviously are, and you decided that you're going to make a big change in your life, and you know, you're going to do them regardless of what anybody thinks or what anybody says. It's like you're being held to a standard, and it's always being held by somebody else's standard. So it's just important for yourself just to keep focused on what you're doing for the sake of Allah, and you know, just like take your time and plan like what you want to do, like bit by bit, so you can learn and progress for yourself. Because if you keep listening to them, it can start really affecting you, and kind of make you feel down about yourself, and feel like, oh, you know, sometimes you'll feel like if you don't have that support from your family, like what is the point, kind of thing. I know that obviously they're not Muslim, but when you feel that there's nobody kind of there for you, it can make you feel quite like alone, and like doubt yourself as well.
So like it also kind of like just it made a connection with me to like how Muslims themselves, like Muslims who are really like secular and liberal and who don't really take the deen seriously, kind of make it harder on like other Muslims who do care and who do want to take it seriously, because you know, everybody is expecting us to be like them, and when we're not like them, it makes them uncomfortable.
Exactly.
But yeah, and then it was just like my mom's uncle he's Muslim, has told me before, because my mom, before I started wearing niqab, I went from like a headscarf and like skirts to a baya and a khimar and then jilbabs and stuff. And when I started wearing that stuff, she was already like, why are you wearing that? And her uncle was like, no, what she's wearing is fine as long as she doesn't cover her face. Like, that's what terrorists do. Those were his words. And I just kind of sat there. Because he's not only is he Muslim, but he's like my mom's uncle. Like, he's older than me, and I wasn't gonna sit there and argue with him about it, just because like I didn't know what to do in that moment. Like, do I correct him on what he's saying, or do I just not confront him because he's my uncle? And I was just like, ooh, little does he know, I'm already wearing it. But I feel like he kind of only said that to make my mom feel better, because his son's wife, she just came from Yemen like 2 or 3 years ago, and she still wears niqab. So I feel like he wouldn't actually think that if like he would let his son marry a woman who's in niqabi. But also, you know, it's I feel like for a lot of Yemeni women, like wearing hijab is like a cultural thing. Like it's expected of them culturally, and that's why they do it. So it's not really something that they do because it's a religious obligation, only because it's expected from them, from their family and from like people in the community. Because like a lot of my cousins and like some of my aunties and stuff, they really don't take their hijab seriously. Like sometimes they'll like post pictures on like their Snapchat like that's public with like without hijab.
Yeah.
And so, and like yeah, that's just how what I've noticed. But yeah.
Alhamdulillah. So exactly roughly how long have you been wearing the niqab then?
About 6 months.
Okay, alhamdulillah. And you became Muslim how long ago?
2 years ago.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. So like what, okay, you've talked a lot about obviously wearing the niqab and everything, but what specifically drew you to want to wear the niqab itself?
So when I started wearing hijab, and I actually like started to wear it because I'm Muslim and for Allah, I actually started learning about Islam more, and reading the seerah of the Prophet and stuff like that. And we as Muslim women, we are supposed to emulate the wives of the Prophet, and they're the best example of women for us. And that was really like they were like my role models, is to be like them. And obviously, I'm never going to be like that. I mean, these are the wives of the Prophet, like these are the best women ever. So I'm never going to be like up there with them, but it's important to be as close to them as I can be.
Mm-hmm. MashaAllah, yeah, because that is the standard, and that's what a lot of people don't realize as well.
Yeah.
Even like the ayat in the Quran that talk about the hijab, people often say, oh, well, the hijab, it was for the wives of the Prophet and his daughters. But subhanAllah, it also says, and the believing women.
The believing women, yes.
And I just think, like, did you like just stop reading early on purpose, or
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's baffling to me, to be honest. I hear that so often from people who say, oh, like hijab is not that part of like it's not obligatory for women and things like that. I just find it very strange.
Yeah. Well, even from like Muslims themselves who have this view like hijab is cultural, it's not religious, it's cultural. I have a choice, I can choose not to wear it or not. And it's like, that's not right though. You can choose whether you want to obey Allah or not, but you can't choose whether something is an obligation when it's established in the religion.
Exactly.
And I tried to have this conversation like with my mom and my sister when I told them that I wear niqab, that like, because my mom thinks that it's something that's purely cultural and has nothing to do with religion. I'm like, no, like that's not right. There's a difference of opinion among Islamic scholars on if it's an obligation or if it's just something that's like a highly recommended act. And either way, it's something that is still part of the religion, because it's something that you still get rewards for doing. And my mom was just like, well, are these scholars people online or people in person or blah, blah, blah.
Wow.
I'm just like, oh my goodness. And then my other sister was like, well, those scholars that I sent to you about hijab not being obligatory were scholars. And I was
they're
like,
not scholars.
I was like, they're not scholars. And eventually I just kind of gave up, because you got to pick and choose what battles you want to fight. I gave them the truth, and I told my sister, if you actually want to talk about this and like learn, I'm open to do that, but the way you're talking to me right now, I'm not going to put in the energy for it. It's not worth it.
Yeah, alhamdulillah. So you mentioned before that you're obviously you're a student and you work as well. So how do you find wearing the niqab and doing those two things?
So my job is through financial aid, so it's federal work study through the school. And basically what it is they like reward you like a certain amount of money for the year, and you don't get that. It's a job basically, but that's the amount of money that you can make working at that job. So when I first started school, I spent a lot of time like applying for jobs. It took me like a really long time to find a job actually, but I don't think it's because I was wearing the niqab, because most of the applications that I submitted were online, and I only wore the niqab to 2 interviews because I hadn't started wearing it during the first one. So the second interview that I was wearing niqab, I actually got the job.
Okay.
And so I just work in one of the office of like the professors, and I just work at the front desk. Like when students come in and drop off papers and stuff, like I file them and things like that. So I'm an office assistant.
MashaAllah. So how do you find being an office assistant? Like when you said you're at the front desk, so when people come in and they see this MashaAllah sister wearing the niqab and abaya, what's their reaction usually?
People, I feel like I mean, I'm sure that they notice, but they don't really like show that they notice it.
Mm-hmm.
So the only time, like, there's only 2 times someone really like was like, oh, was this girl had come in and she like looked at me and she's like, oh my gosh, and I was like, do you need something? She's like, oh no, sorry, I thought you were, and she was looking for someone else who was there before me.
Okay.
And then she left. And then the first time, it was when I was waiting for my interview and I was sitting outside the office in the waiting area, and one of the professors was coming in and he didn't like see me sitting there.
Mm-hmm.
And when he saw me, he kind of like jumped and got scared, and then he was like, I swear it had nothing to do with what you're wearing, like I just didn't expect anyone to be there. And I feel like it probably wasn't what I was wearing, but I mean, that it may have, you know, been why he got a little scared. And I was like, no, it's okay, don't worry about it. And then he kept apologizing and I was like, it's okay. But that's really the only the only, like, I guess, not problems, but like things I've experienced like that are targeted towards my niqab.
Alhamdulillah. So like, do you feel that you get better reception from non-Muslims than Muslims?
Yes, I think so. One of the mosques here, I went and substituted for their like kids class, where it's just like you teach them the Arabic alphabet and then the 5 pillars of Islam, that type of thing. And I was only there for the day. But one of the men in the masjid, he wasn't like the imam or anything. He was just kind of like helping out, like setting everything up and stuff. Well, I was making copies and he came up to me and he was trying to like make small talk, and he asked me like if I'm a student and stuff. And then I knew that that's the reason he had come up to talk to me was about my niqab. He was like, you know, you don't have to wear that. It's really not Islam. You know, you should take it off because the kids are going to ask questions and blah, 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 blah. And I wasn't going to wear my niqab in front of the kids anyway because they're like 5 and 6.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, but it was just like, if they ask questions about something, it's good. They need to know about their religion. That's what they're here for. They're here to learn about Islam. That's what Saturday school's for. So it was just kind of funny to me that I'm getting this kind of reception from Muslims inside the masjid.
Yeah, that's silly.
So after classes, I was talking to some of the other girls that are there that help out with classes and that like attend the classes, and I kind of told them what happened. I wasn't really complaining. It was just more of like, oh yeah, I have to deal with this, you know. And they're like, he said what? And I was like, they kind of like were like, oh my gosh, like shocked. But I wasn't shocked because I'm like, I received most of the comments like that, like online, like, because I'm very active on Twitter. So, and I'm a very opinionated woman. So I'm very like loud on Twitter. And so I get a lot of those reactions from other Muslims. And they were really shocked that he had said that and I wasn't. And so they're like, no, that's not acceptable. So after I had left, the next day, the teacher I was subbing for had messaged me and she was like, I just want to apologize for like what he had said to you, and it's not acceptable behavior in the masjid and blah, 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 and that kind of thing. So, but yeah, the people who have been most, I think, receptive of it and most like accepting of it have been either non-Muslims or people who aren't my family. Like, it's weird. People who don't know me are more accepting of my decisions and my change than people who do know me.
Yeah, subhanAllah, that's often the case. Alhamdulillah.
Yeah.
And it's when I think that's why it's important as well. Like, just I think for me personally, the lesson that I've learned from that is that you really shouldn't judge people, because I think when you come into Islam especially, and yeah, it's like kind of getting a new family, you know, you've got all these Muslims and stuff like that, people are happy for you and things, but then when you do start really trying to practice Islam, you get judged by everybody else's so-called Islamic stick. So, you know, however religious they are, they're going to kind of judge you based on that. So some people will look at you and they will think, oh, mashallah, look, she's so righteous, she's so religious, you know, because she's, you know, doing this, and, you know, how much she's changed. And that's really encouraging, because obviously, like, you are trying your best and everything. But at the same time, it makes you a bit, like, you know, it makes you feel quite conscious of yourself, because like, oh, what if you do something wrong then? Because you don't know everything already, do you know what I mean? And then on the other hand, you get people who will be like, oh yeah, you don't have to do that. No, you shouldn't be doing this. Or this is like, it's not a part of Islam. This is a bit extreme, you know, and you've learned something new, which you know is Islam, it's authentic. But then you're going up against people who they've been practicing Islam all their lives. So as far as they're concerned, they know more about Islam than you do. Even though maybe they haven't been practicing properly, they've been more culturally, you know, doing more cultural things, you know. So it's, subhanAllah, it's
I noticed
difficult.
that yeah, I've noticed that that's kind of a trend amongst people who were raised Muslim, is that a
Yeah.
lot of them assume that like when a convert is talking about something regarding the deen, that they don't know what they're talking about. If it's not something that they don't know about, then that convert or the revert is wrong. They don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, I understand that you feel like it's like they're gatekeeping Islam, you know, from other Muslims. It's just it's so weird to me. And I've gotten a lot of those comments like online, but there's also when I was in high school, there was this other hijabi on campus, and me and her were pretty close. I mean, I knew her when I was in elementary school, you know.
Alhamdulillah.
Her older brother was like really in love with my older sister when they were like 7. So
MashaAllah.
yeah, so we've been kind of pretty good friends, I guess. But when I first started wearing hijab, and like I went from wearing like skinny jeans and stuff to a skirt, and she never wore pants or anything, but she like looked at me and she's like, you know, you can wear pants. And I wasn't Muslim for that long, so I didn't exactly like understand the conditions of hijab at that time yet. But
Yeah.
I just kind of looked at her and I was like, it's okay, like kind of like don't worry about it type of thing. Like I'm cool with what I'm wearing. And it was just, now that I think about it, it was just kind of weird to me that like if you see a Muslim who's doing something like correct or something that that may not seem like it's important to you, but that is like a recommended act. Like same thing with niqab. Like why would you go up to them and try to stop them from doing that?
Exactly.
Yeah. But I've gotten a lot of other comments like that, like on Twitter especially, of Muslims like basically saying, well, you know, you don't have to do that, or you know, I know that you technically have to do that, but it's okay if you don't. Or like other Muslims saying like, well, how you should go learn your alif ba ta type of thing, like go learn alphabet, go learn tajweed before you speak about Islam and this and that. And I'm like, you know, you've probably been Muslim your whole life and don't even have like a single chapter of the Quran memorized yet. I think we all need to relax on putting ourselves on pedestals.
Yeah. Some people are just so rude with it as well, you know. It's just like, okay, if I don't know alif ba ta properly, does that mean that I should just not do anything? Like,
yes.
I mean, it doesn't even make sense. Everybody's got their own way of learning and what is going to come more naturally to them, or what they're going to struggle with more. So if I find this particular thing easy, shouldn't I just go with it and see where it takes me and try to, like, you know, kind of get on from there? It's so ridiculous. Like, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, even if I don't know, like, even if I can't even read Arabic, even if I don't have anything memorized of the Quran, how was that refuting what I'm saying? You know,
Exactly.
like how was that an argument? But yeah, a lot of Muslims have said things like that, or like other Muslims have been like, well, I've been Muslim my whole life and blah blah blah, I'm better than you. And I'm just like, okay, you know, it's okay, you can think that, it's fine, you know, it's fine.
Allah. So have you done any traveling wearing the niqab then?
No, I don't really travel, to be honest. Like I'll drive from like my campus to home and stuff. That's really the only traveling that I do.
Okay,
I don't
cool.
really fly. I think the last time I flew was when I was like 15.
Okay.
But this summer we were supposed to fly to go see my family in another state. But I haven't decided if I'm going to wear niqab when I go and see them, even though they're Muslim, because, you know, they've already made comments about like not being receptive of the niqab before, and I don't know if like I'm going to be staying with them for like a month, and I don't know if I really want to be dealing with that kind of like drama and judgment.
Well, inshallah, we'll see how it goes, isn't it? Allah will make it easy for you. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, subhanallah. So what would you advise to any sisters who would like to wear the niqab but they're struggling, or, you know, they kind of like maybe don't feel confident to wear it?
I just think that like it's okay if you're not a perfect Muslim. Like niqabis sin just like hijabis and just like women who don't wear hijab. And I feel like that's something that that's what keeps a lot of girls from either wearing hijab or moving on to niqab and things like that. Is like, well, I still struggle with this, and like I don't think a hijabi or niqabi should be doing something like that. But you know, that's not a really correct way to view things, because, you know, why would you stop? Even if you're having trouble with something, you're still going to be rewarded for the other things that you're doing. And as long as you are working towards correcting yourself and improving yourself as a Muslim, and seeking repentance from Allah and stuff like that, it's okay. It's okay to make mistakes. We're we're human. That's just how we are. We sin, and the best of sinners are those who repent. So it's people have this view that like niqabis don't ever sin, and so it really puts other girls off. And then also that whole like struggle with, well, there's gonna be attention on me because people are gonna notice this big change. And like I said before, that's something that's part of like what being a Muslim is sacrificing for Allah, sacrificing our comfort for Him. And I know a lot of girls who are shy and who want to make that transition and just don't know how to do it without people, not necessarily judging them, but just talking about them and being like, oh yeah, she did this now. So it's just something that you're always going to have to deal with as a person who's going through change and improving yourself. Like, people are going to notice, and it's good that they notice that you're changing to something good. So
yeah, exactly. SubhanAllah, what I've experienced is that, like, when you're patient and you just keep consistent, eventually those same people later on, they're gonna come to you and ask you for advice, because they can see that you was the one who, like, you were serious about doing self-improvement and trying to help yourself, and you faced so many things because of it. But later on they'll come and they'll want your opinion on things because they can see that you're a strong person.
Yeah.
So what does the niqab mean to you then, finally?
I think it's just something that, like, it kind of signifies, like, I'm a Muslim woman, and I take my religion seriously. Not that hijabis don't take their religion seriously, just that like that's what it means to me.
Yeah.
And it's also a way to like I feel like men specifically like won't try to have contact with me when I'm in a niqab like they do when I'm in a hijab.
Okay.
And like when I would wear hijab, like men would still try to shake my hand and stuff, and like it was just kind of like that awkward kind of thing. But now that I wear niqab, like men who aren't Muslim, like it's just this weird thing. Like they know, they know better. They know better.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khair, sister. I've really enjoyed this interview, mashallah. Very inspirational. And do you have, you said you're very active on Twitter, so do you want to call your Twitter tag, whatever?
Oh yeah, so my Twitter is the same as my Instagram, Alaztekiyyah. So it's like Aztec with the Arabic version. So BALAZTECIYYAH.
Okay, inshallah.
So yeah.
So yeah, we'll put that in the description box, inshallah. So anybody who would like to follow Sister Celeste, then you can do so, inshallah, and be more up to date with all the things what she does. Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khair, sister. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this.
Thank you for having me.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.